Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This week's reading, The Redeeming Light. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The book of Isaiah in the Bible, chapter 9, tells us, "The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined." What is this light of which so many scriptures speak? In Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, we read of an early experience the Master had with that light. I was blessed about the age of 8 with a wonderful healing through the photograph of Lahiri Mahashaya. This experience gave intensification to my divine love. While at our family estate in Ikapur, Bengal, I was stricken with Asiatic cholera. My life was despaired of. The doctors could do nothing. At my bedside, Mother frantically motioned me to look at Lahiri Mahashaya's picture on the wall above my head. Bow to him mentally. She knew I was too feeble even to lift my hands in salutation. If you really show your devotion and inwardly kneel before him, your life will be spared. I gazed at his photograph and saw there a blinding light enveloping my body and the entire room. My nausea and other uncontrollable symptoms disappeared. I was well. At once I felt strong enough to bend over and touch Mother's feet in appreciation of her immeasurable faith in her Guru. Mother pressed her head repeatedly against the little picture. O omnipresent Master, I thank thee that thy light hath healed my son. I realized that she too had witnessed the luminous blaze through which I had instantly recovered from a usually fatal disease. Where my light is, God once told a saint whom the divine light had healed, no darkness can dwell. The divine light, pure, calm, liberating, is the only final cure for every kind of delusion, ill health, emotional grief, and spiritual ignorance. Seek it daily in the silence, in deep meditation. As the Bhagavad Gita says in the 5th chapter, "For whom that darkness of the soul is chased by light, splendid and clear shines manifest the truth, as if a sun of wisdom sprang to shed its beams of light." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. Welcome, friends. Welcome to this morning's service, and welcome to those of you who are joining us online. For anyone who doesn't know us, my name is Swami Suryadas, and this is my wife, Swami Chandi, and we are very blessed to be here with you today, sharing these beautiful teachings. Yogananda once gazed upon a group of disciples and said, "You have no idea how beautiful you all are. I see you all as light." And if Yogananda were here, standing here today, looking upon all of you, he could say the same thing. For each of us, whether or not we have that inner realization, are in fact beings of light. Each of us is a spark of that one light that is the presence of God. In today's reading, we learned about how Yogananda was healed from a usually fatal disease Asiatic cholera through the light of his guru, Lahiri Mahashaya. Lahiri Mahashaya was the guru of Yogananda's parents. He was the family guru. And Lahiri Mahashaya and Mukunda, despite the fact that Lahiri left this world shortly after Yogananda or Mukunda came into it, they were very close. Their lives were linked. Lahiri Mahashaya was Lahiri Mahashaya was the guru of Mukunda's mother, and she took Mukunda to meet her guru. They went to Benares, and they went into his family home, and Lahiri was there. He was meditating in front of a group of disciples, and they sat in the back of the room, and they tried to quietly meditate, but Lahiri felt the presence of them, and he called them to come forth. And Lahiri took the babe in his arms and blessed him, placing his finger at the spiritual eye of Mukunda and offering him a kind of baptism. And he said, "Little mother, thy son will be a yogi. As a spiritual engine, he will carry many souls to God." The lives of these two great souls were closely connected. When Yogananda grew to be a boy, he would sit in front of a little image of Lahiri Mahashaya and meditate. And as he meditated, Lahiri would emerge from that little image and become a full-grown person, Lahiri sitting before him, meditating with him. And Mukunda would prostrate himself, and he would reach out to touch the feet of Lahiri Mahashaya. And suddenly Lahiri would go back into the little picture frame. He would disappear. Lahiri was playing hide-and-go-seek with little Mukunda, with Yogananda. So Yogananda, even as a boy, even as young Mukunda, had great faith in the divinity that was fully awake in Lahiri Mahashaya. And because of that great faith, he was able to bow before the image of the great Guru, and this beautiful light came from the picture, this very brilliant light, and he was instantly healed from what is normally a fatal disease. This was a great miracle in the life of Yogananda. As some of you know, I went through a period of illness recently myself, and I was not instantly healed by my Guru's light, but nonetheless, I believe that a kind of miracle did occur, and it occurred through Yogananda's light. I went through a year and a half of symptoms of great fatigue, of muscle aches, of physical weakness, and difficulties breathing. And from the beginning of this challenge, I made a commitment that I would follow my Guru's teachings, Paramahansa Yogananda, and Swamiji's teachings in relation to this illness. And I remember that Swami and Yogananda both said, "What comes of its own, let it come." And so I vowed that I would accept this illness as being for my own good. And in fact, I accepted it as a gift from Divine Mother and from my Guru. And I remember one day I prayed to Master. I said, "Master, I know that you can heal me in an instant, and I know that you care for me. And therefore I understand that this illness is for my own good. And so I accept it. I accept it as a gift from you and from Divine Mother." And I also said, I don't want to be presumptuous, so I will do my part. I will put out energy towards healing. And so I explored different modalities of healing, from allopathic medicine to more natural forms of medicine. I did some fasting. I explored different approaches to diet, to exercise, to supplements, and so on. And in time, I was healed. But the miracle is this: through the light of my Guru, through the light of our Gurus, from the beginning of that illness, I began to feel more and more strongly the presence of God and Guru within in my life. And I felt the joy of the soul bubbling up from within. And throughout the illness, for a year and a half, I felt more and more and more of it as I went on. Some months I had difficulties even meditating properly, at least the way I was used to. And yet that joy and that presence was with me more and more. And that joy has stayed with me. And I am truly grateful to God and Guru for this experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. As a young man, Yogananda was meditating in his meditation room. And this was during World War I. And so there was a great war happening in the world. And he was in his little attic meditation room meditating. And suddenly his awareness, his consciousness was shifted to the body of a captain of a ship. And this captain was in the midst of a battle. And suddenly a shell hit the ammunition locker on the ship, and there was a great explosion. And many people died in that explosion, and the ship was torn apart. And those who still lived dove into the water, and they were swimming madly for the shore. And the ship was some distance from the shore, so it wasn't assured that they would make it to the shore. And this captain / Yogananda also dove into the water and was swimming, hoping that he could make it to the shore. And he did make it to the shore, and as he was stepping out of the water, he was congratulating himself on having not drowned, when suddenly a stray bullet found him, and he dropped to the ground. And he was laying in the sand, and he was clutching his body, and he knew he was dying, and he was crying out. And then suddenly, Yogananda's consciousness was shifted back to his body in his little meditation room. And then he was clutching his body with great joy. He wasn't dying, he was whole. And he felt very good about this, of course. But then suddenly, once again, his consciousness was shifted back to the man who was dying on the beach. And he cried out, "Am I meditating in my little meditation room, or am I dying on this beach?" And he heard a voice, and the voice said this: "What has life or death to do with light? In the image of my light I have made you. The relativities of life and death belong to the cosmic dream. Behold your dreamless being. Awake, my child, awake." We are not these bodies. We are not these personalities. We are that infinite light. That light cannot be harmed. It cannot die. This body can be harmed. It can become ill, and it will one day die. We need to learn to shift our identification away from the body and to that light, to the reality that we are spirit. When we are able to do that, we are freed from all suffering. The great masters of this path have realized their oneness with that light. They know themselves to be that light. And they have come into the world to show us that we too are that light, and that we can shift our identity away from this frail reality of the physical world to that infinite, ever-present reality of God. This is our true reality. Shortly after that experience, it was a few years later, Yogananda came to America. And he arrived in America in 1920 and on the East Coast. And he soon met the man who would become one of his first Kriya Yoga disciples. And his name was Dr. Lewis. And Dr. Lewis had many questions about the nature of reality, many spiritual, metaphysical questions. And he would seek out ministers and spiritual teachers, and he would ask them questions, but they couldn't give him satisfactory answers. He would read books, he couldn't find answers. that satisfied his yearning. And Yogananda said when they first met, and he told him about this, he was quoting Jesus, "How can the blind lead the blind? They both shall land in a ditch." So the first day that Yogananda and Dr. Lewis met, Dr. Lewis came to him with a question that he had been pondering for many years. In the scriptures, he said, it says, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." And he asked Yogananda, "Do you know what this means?" And Yogananda said, "I think so." And he said, "Well, have you experienced that light?" And Yogananda said, "I think so." He says, "Well, by all means, show me that light." And Yogananda said, "Okay, in time." And they sat and they spoke about spiritual things for perhaps an hour or two. And then Yogananda got out a tiger skin and he placed it on the floor and he seated himself in a cross-legged position near the head. And he asked Dr. Lewis to sit in front of him, also in a cross-legged position. And Dr. Lewis, who was a very conservative dresser, always wearing a three-piece suit, assures us that he did not sit in the full lotus pose, but he did manage to get in some kind of a cross-legged position in front of Master. And then Master did an interesting thing. He placed his forehead directly up against the forehead of Dr. Lewis. I've never heard of another saint doing this, and I've never heard of Master doing this at any other time, though perhaps he did. And this must have been very strange for this man in 1920 who just first met Paramahansa Yogananda. But as he placed his head up against the forehead of Dr. Lewis, he was able to still the waves of feeling, and he was able to help him to focus his energy purely so it rose up the spine, and the spiritual eye appeared before his inner vision, the spiritual eye with a blue field with a gold circle around it and the silvery white star in the center, just like we see up above here. And Dr. Lewis said that Yogananda did nothing to suggest to him anything about what the spiritual eye was or what he was expected to see. This just appeared for him. And further, Yogananda helped him to penetrate the silver star with his consciousness, and he experienced the 1,000-petaled lotus. Suddenly, Dr. Lewis knew what this saying meant, what it was like. If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. He experienced that light. We may not have the opportunity to have Master, to have Yogananda show us that light in this particular way, but nonetheless, these great gurus have brought techniques, teachings, practices that we can do that will help us to experience that light and to commune with that light, and ultimately to realize our oneness with that light. That is the purpose that the gurus have come into this world for. Yogananda, shortly after this, traveled around the country speaking to groups all over the United States. And he wrote a letter to Dr. Lewis, and Dr. Lewis said this was the most important letter that he had ever received in his life. And after Yogananda left his body, he shared this letter with the monks at Mount Washington. And he said this letter wasn't written just for him, but for all true disciples. And I'd like to share that, a portion of that letter with you. Your spirit is with me. Your spirit is coming into the limelight. Be not afraid, child of the eternal lightning. March on with unperturbed, steady steps, elbowing through a million darknesses. Why, what is this body? What is this passing show? They are gone, but the candles that you are lighting and burning in your Father's house will show you your path here and hereafter. Let us be about the business of lighting those candles that will show us our path here and hereafter, and that will lead to the ultimate realization that we are a part of that one light that is God. God bless you.
Good afternoon. It's our joy to be here with you today. And, this topic, the redeeming light, Swami has gone into, in the rays of the one light, many topics of we are children of the light. Can man see God? The rays of the one light. So he has this flow that's happening in this book. And we can tune into that flow each week and also at home in our daily lives. I had this week in meditation the opportunity to really go deep into what is this redeeming light? Well, as Christians in the Christian thought, when we were growing up, I grew up in a very dogmatic kind of Christian faith. And what we were taught was, if you have Jesus Christ, you have the light. But as yogis, what Kriyananda says to us is divine redemption, or the inner light, means to draw from identification with delusion and become inwardly absorbed in that light of truth, which was so interesting. There's no mistakes. Today they did that, give me a light to light my way. Truth is a light, so wise men say. It was so beautiful. I also had another thing that happened this week. I had some sunflowers that actually ended up on my doorstep that had been cut in my garden out front. And there's no really accident for what happens in our lives. And, this was the solstice this week, which is one of my most favorite times of the year because of the light. That increasing light is with us. And the flowers also feel that light. Sunflowers are one of our favorites, and I walked in this morning and here they are. And if you've ever really looked and absorbed a sunflower, the middle of the sunflower, look really into it. It's all this matrix design, and it's God's light that's filled this flower. They actually, if you watch them, they flow with the light. In the morning and in the afternoon and in the evening, they move with the light. We can move with the light. I had an experience when I think I was in my mid-30s. I didn't look up the exact date, but I had to draw. This was in the 80s. I had been, my mother had passed away. My father passed away when I was 15. My mother passed away when I was 30. And so when my mother passed away, I had already begun to be moving towards spirituality. But it was really esoteric at that time, and I didn't have, in those days, you never talked to anybody about these things because they thought you were crazy. So I had to keep most of these things to myself. And my mother had passed away suddenly. She'd had a heart attack. She came over to my house earlier that week, and we were talking about her healing and what her next opportunity was. But that week, she had another heart attack, and I was not able to say goodbye to her. She passed away that quickly. Then I really worried. I worried about her soul. I worried about her next step in life. And for me, I didn't know, I just knew that there was a heaven and an earth. I mean, I was Catholic at the time. And so I prayed a lot to God. Give me a sign that she's with you. And every night I would go to bed in my bedroom, and there would be this light in the ceiling. And it looked like an angel. It did. Its arms were out, and it was like being held. every night that was there for about, I would say, probably 7 days. And, Yogananda and Kriyananda talk about when people pass, that we are able to cross over, and the veil is so thin at that time. But I didn't know any of these teachings at that time. So I just felt so comforted by that light every night when it was there. Then one night, it was gone. It wasn't there at all. And I had shutters in my room, and so I was going up to the shutters and trying to move the light, and it never appeared again. But I knew at that moment that God had provided that situation for me to bring that calmness that she had been taken care of. I've also been reading about a story, and it was recommended to me by us Jyotish had recommended it in one of his blogs. And the story is by Tricia Baker, and it's called Angels in the OR. And it's about a woman who actually was in a car accident, and it was in Austin, Texas. And she had a back injury to her back, and it took several hours for a doctor to actually operate on her, but she died on the operating table. And she floated up above her body, as we've heard many stories about this before. And what she talked mostly about during this was that the light beckoned her. The light was so incredible, she said. It was so encompassing, better than a love for your mom or a love for a romantic love. It was just all consuming. And she also had this deep connection after she actually went back into her body. That love stayed with her. She was able to communicate with people on a different level. She was able to understand feelings and being able to refine thoughts, which she never did before. She said that being out of her body, I learned more in that short time than I had in a whole lifetime. So we are so fortunate to have these teachings and being able to bring meditation into our lives. Swami Kriyananda used to always focus on the good and focus on the light in people and their goodness. And we too, she said in this book, she said, the ultimate thing that she learned is love is the most important thing, and that kindness to others and service to others should be our guiding post. So I know we all know this, but it's always so validating to hear it from another source that we're on the right path. I've often thought that through these experiences that this is, it came to me this week that it's a pathway towards the light. All of our experiences bring us closer and closer to the light. And our experiences of deepening our meditations, of seeing it in the flowers, of seeing it in one another, of seeing it all around us. If we look for that goodness, we will be able to see it more clearly. I wanted to end with a short reading from Yogananda I found in the preceptor lessons of the 1930s. He states, it's a prayer, Heavenly Father, transform our consciousness from thy physical body to the spine, and from it through the 7 centers of cosmic consciousness, where the glory and light in the fullness of thy manifestations, where life forever reigns in all thy power. Om. Isa. Amen.